is everybody tonight? Rob, how are you?
I am living the dream. And yourself?
I love how you're just so in the pocket, just real mellow. I am well, thank you.
Well, if everyone else had heard our conversation beforehand, it would have been a whole different tune from what
We're
we
not
got
talking
into.
about that conversation before.
No, we're not.
There's some things that will get me in trouble. Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to do another movie review. It is a movie that is near and dear to my heart. It is 1993 Quentin Tarantino's True Romance. And according to IMDb, the synopsis is: in Detroit, a lonely pop culture geek, we can all relate to that, marries a call girl, steals cocaine from her pimp, and tries to sell it in Hollywood. Meanwhile, the owners of the cocaine, the mob, track them down in an attempt to reclaim it. So this came out in 1993, so the 28-year anniversary is coming up. I'm curious, Rob, where were you in 1993, and where were you when you first saw this movie?
So I definitely saw the movie at home. I never saw it in theaters. To be honest with you, I didn't even remember seeing a commercial for this movie when it was released in theaters back in September. So I saw it on Cinemax of all places, and I remember I was a kid. I might have been like I think I might have been like 10 or 9 when I first saw it.
Wow.
And I remember as a kid, because I was already I've always been into movies, but I remember as a kid watching this movie, and I was like, this movie is so good. I was amazed literally from start to finish what I was watching. And I remember, you remember those days back in the old days, TV Guide, or when you had the Channel 3 that shows you like the roster of all the movies. So I was like, okay, True Romance coming at Thursday. God, I'm gonna be asleep at that point. Like that was my anticipation of the movie when I first saw it, when I saw it the first time. So left a very good impression with me. And then yeah, I've been a fan of the movie since the mid '90s. So I'm not sure what your introduction was for the movie.
I didn't see it in 93. I definitely I kind of missed a lot of the movies that were in the theaters, but I ended up seeing it after I had seen a couple other Tarantino movies. It might have been after like I saw Dust of Dawn, and I was like, oh, I like this style, I like this guy. I want to see what else he's done, and I kind of started watching stuff back. So I must have seen it probably close to my 20s. And then I think one of the dollar movie theaters in my town played it again in the movie theater in 35
Really?
millimeter.
Man.
Yeah, it was like $3 or something.
Oh man.
You go, you pay it, and you got to see it in 35 millimeter, which I thought Tarantino definitely makes movies for the movie theater, especially in this era of his career.
Just to correct it here, so Tony Scott directed the movie.
Okay.
Quentin wrote the film.
That's right. That's right.
So there, I think a lot of people had gotten the misconception that he directed the movie. He didn't. But when you watch the movie, you could definitely feel his presence, if you will, because it's his script, it's his dialogue, and Tony Scott did a really good job in virtually keeping everything the same, with the exception of, keeping things in its original narrative. So the narrative was like Pulp Fiction, everything's all over the place, middle's beginning, and so on and so forth. So he kept the core story exactly the same, but just flipped everything to keep everything linear, and then changed the ending. So
that's sort of what makes sense, because I feel like it was Tarantino, but like under wraps. Like they reined him in, and it was like there's his first writing, and it wasn't even him directing it. So I saw like what I saw was seeds of Tarantino.
Yeah.
But it makes sense that he did actually direct it. It was his writing so this actually makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so Tony Scott, I happened to learn when I first got the Blu-ray. I'm not sorry, not the Blu-ray, the DVD, when it was released, like however many years ago it was when they released the special edition. So they had the commentary tracks from both Quentin and Tony Scott, and they go into some really in-depth information about how they, how Tony got involved and how Quentin got acquainted with Tony. And I know that Tony was really, really interested in directing Reservoir Dogs, and he was like, I want to direct this movie, because when I think about it now, I think it does fit his sensibilities. Yeah. Quentin's like, no, this is gonna be my film, but I'll give you this movie, True Romance. And he's like, all right, I'll read it. So he read it. He was like, holy shit, I'll direct this movie. And then we got the masterpiece that it is. That was the first movie that I remember that Tony Scott had directed that I really paid attention to who he was, because at the time I was starting to get into like who the people behind the scenes were. And I saw Quentin Tarantino's name, who I was already familiar with because of Pulp Fiction. But then when I saw Tony Scott's name, I was like, I got to remember that name. And then I realized I already seen, what was it? Beverly Hills Cop 2, Top Gun, Days of Thunder. So I'd seen his movies, but for whatever reason, I never remembered to follow up with who the director was. But once I saw that movie, I was like, oh shit, I have seen his films, and they're like amazing movies that he's directed. So, I think I think a lot of people's mind, this is considered to be one of his best movies that he's ever directed. And I have to agree 100%. But my God, I know we're going to get into some of our our favorite parts of the movie, but when you watch the movie again, did you forget how many recognizable faces are in the movie?
How did you get so many people before they were famous in that? That is wild. And I had to like go back into people's IMDb to be like, oh, this was way before Soprano. Oh, this was way before, Michael Rapaport, Brad Pitt, Val Kilmer, James Gandolfini. Of course, Christian Slater.
Well, he had a bit of a career going on at that point because from the late 80s, he had a kind of a bit of a start.
But everyone else blew my mind. Val Kilmer, Brad Pitt, James Gandolfini. I was like, oh my God, everyone's so young in this. This is wild.
Yeah. And, and I didn't, that was the first time. No, I'm sorry. I take that back. I remember Patricia Arquette because I love horror movies. I remember from the third Nightmare film, Nightmare on Elm Street, The Dream Warriors. So when I saw her in that movie, I was like, holy shit, that's the chick from Nightmare 3. But, when I was a kid, I was like, oh my God, she's naked, and I was like, wow, she's got titties, So, yeah. So I remember,
I think I like those.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God. Mom and Dad's watching. Nope. So yeah, this movie like was so like landmark when it comes to the people that were in the film. I mean, you have Gary Oldman, who has only 2 scenes. But God, are they fucking awesome. And Samuel L. Jackson's in this movie too. He was the guy in the hotel room with Drexel, Gary Oldman's character.
That's right.
He had the glasses, and they're talking about the eating ass, and like fuck, I don't do that shit. Like that was such a phenomenal conversation. And what I come to find out too through Tony Scott's commentary was that scene alone almost got him an X rating.
Oh dang!
And just talking about eating pussy. So yeah,
it's wild how the standards have changed.
I know, right?
You go, what? You almost got a rated R for just a conversation, like just words?
No, but an X rating though.
Sorry.
X rating just about talking about giving oral sex. And I'm like, really? I mean, you know what? So, but here's the thing with the dialogue in this movie. It is Quentin through and through. I mean, you can, and when you listen to it, you understand the momentum, you understand the lingo, you understand that there is an authenticity behind the conversation because he's deriving it from a lot of his own personal. Because apparently this is like his most personal film, even though he didn't direct it. But if he said if there's an autobiography out there right now, the closest autobiography there is right now of me is True Romance.
So right.
So like it kind of reminded me. I don't know if it's a fair comparison, but when I was watching this movie, I'm like, this sort of reminded me of The Departed, where you have all these major stars in the movie and half of them are dead halfway through the film. And then this movie is a little bit of that as well, too, where you have these major stars, but then they weren't well-known people at the time.
Right.
But when you watch the movie now and you're looking at it, you're like, wow, half the cast died and didn't even survive. And I was like, this reminded me of like another movie that had a very similar kind of a thing, and that was Departed. So I was like, okay, so technically, if you think about it, with that caliber of star, True Romance did it first.
Yeah. Yep.
So
I see. Interesting. I mean, I think even at a young age, I was like, wow, Dennis Hopper is dead. Like maybe, 2 scenes and he's dead. That's wild to me.
And so let's talk about, the characters here, because we kind of we're since we're going all over the place with this here. So the characters we have Clarence Worley, played by Christian Slater, and we have Alabama Worley now, who's played by the lovely Patricia Arquette. That movie made me a fan of her. Like that movie made me realize how beautiful she really is. When you look at her now, she's still a very beautiful woman, but that movie was like the pinnacle of like, wow, she is gorgeous. So we have her meeting up with Clarence, as you kind of discussed in the synopsis, but Their story is kind of an odd one because they meet each other for the first time and they fall in love with each other and they literally get married the next day. Under most circumstances, that should not work, and it probably wouldn't work as well. But considering what these characters are going through, at least us getting to know them, you never question their motivation for doing that. You actually believe just about, at least I did, uh, everything they've said to each other up to that point. I don't know if you felt that way when you were watching them, like how are they falling in love so quickly and sure, whatever. I mean, I'm not sure if you felt the same sense I felt.
I have trust issues, so that was definitely red flags across the board on both ends. When I watch it, I mean, I think it just is a good snapshot of the time, like 93 back then. Like, okay, I mean, that seems to be believable,
Yeah.
but there's just too much information out now. You're like, wait, first of all, she's crazy to say yes, but he's crazy to have like even thought it was a good idea to begin with. I mean, I live in Las Vegas. You can drive between the downtown, the old town part, and then the new town, and there's just marriage chapels, 24-hour marriage chapels, drive-throughs, and you go, oh, this
is a drive-through marriage chapel.
Yeah.
Really? Oh wow.
Yes, sir.
Well, it shouldn't surprise me because we have a drive-through church prayer windows here where we live, and I'm like, I guess, yeah,
Jesus. But you know, I think that the getting married, now we're in the exact opposite. Like I dated my wife for 7 years before she gave me the ultimatum. Like,
you know, when I met my wife in January of 06. We got married in September of 06. And actually, this well, so by the time this review airs, it'll be 15 years, September 26th, that we've been married. Wow. And we met each other, fell in love literally within like, I don't know, 2 months of meeting each other. So when I watched the movie, like, you know, back then I didn't think it was impossible, but just a little unrealistic, but I bought it because I believe the characters.
Right.
So going through that somewhat myself, nothing to that extent, of course, but somewhat myself, where I did fall in love with someone rather quickly and it worked out. We're still together. We're still very much happy. I can understand their motivation. I can understand why they've done this. So there's a bit of a sentimental connection that I have with those characters because I know how that feels like. So, you know, I can understand when someone, you know, if you say yourself, you know, I don't know, I have trust issues. I get that. And I'm not against that mindset, but I from going through what I did through with my wife, you know, like it's possible. Is it possible for one day getting to know each other and love each other and then get married? I don't know about all that, but you know, I'm sure weird things have happened. So, you know, whatever.
Like I said, it didn't take me out of the suspension of disbelief. Like I realized that falling in love at first sight, that first thing, I'm good with that. Little weird, little red flag, but I'm like, yeah, that was probably a thing. We're moving on. But
what did you think of Christian Slater as the lead in this movie? When you first saw him, did you? Because I've seen him before playing more of like a really cool guy. In this movie, he wasn't coming off as a cool guy. He's getting rejected in the first scene of the movie. So did you really buy into his you know, this lonely guy that he's playing in this movie?
You know, I especially then, you know, I remember Christian Slater as always being that cool guy, that good looking, that cool, that raspy boy, you know. So it was a little difficult for me to like walk in and go, okay, nobody likes him. That was kind of hard for me. You know, he's got the nice hair, he's got but then he plays it well. Like he's talkative. I mean, the first thing the movie opens up and he's talking to some random chick at the bar and he's like, yeah, I'd fuck Elvis. I'll let Elvis fuck me. You're like, oh, that's not what you should start any conversation.
But she said she'd fuck him too. So and I was like, okay, so they're off to a good start, you know. And then, you know, it wasn't until he wanted to see a Sonny Chiba triple feature where she was like, nope, not doing that, dude. And I'm like, yeah.
I think, I mean, I interpret it as the look on her face was like, I will agree with anything except for leaving the safety of this bar.
Maybe you probably are right. Yeah, I think you have a good point on in saying that. Well, so okay, so we've got Clarence, and then we get introduced to Alabama, and then we learn a little bit about her history outside of the fact that she's from the South. And she has a pimp named Drexel. Yeah, really. So she has a pimp named Drexel, who's played by the fucking amazing Gary Oldman. So with her background, we don't know too much about it. And honestly, that's one thing about this movie, that we don't really know enough about these characters' background other than what you are presented, and getting to know them. Um, and the thing is that because of what they've, seeing their development with the relationship, you also see other sides of the characters of where they're willing to stick out their necks for their, for each other.
Mhm.
And then that's really where you're starting to like connect with these characters more, because of what they're willing to go through to save each other's lives along the way. I mean, one of the most intensely like violent scenes in this movie is when Alabama gets the shit kicked out of her when she's going up against James Gandolfini, a pre Tony Soprano. Um, and when you watch that scene, you're like, motherfucker, just run. And she's sitting there talking to the guy and just having a conversation. I'm like, God damn, how fucking stupid are you? But when you see what she's going through and why she's doing it, you're like, okay, well, that must be the power of love. But man, that's I love my wife. I will do anything for my wife too. Believe me, I will. But there's a part of me that wonders, I don't think I would approach it the way she did. I would have definitely done something differently to walk away from the situation before it escalates from there. So I mean,
Like scream. You're in the middle of Burbank. You could scream. Someone would hear you.
well, you would think that someone would have heard that when they're being thrown around, or when she's being
Yep.
thrown around, crashing through the walls. Someone's got to hear all that stuff, and then the gunshots are going off, and no one seems to have come by. I mean, that's little things like that I didn't notice with the movie after like the 70th time I've seen it, where I'm like, why no one has heard the gunshots and didn't call the cops.
He hasn't hit anyone burning rubber backwards into traffic.
Yeah.
He does it like 3-4 times. Like, wow, that is risky.
Yeah. And so it's like it's a crazy love story, which is a unique love story in my opinion, because it's so violent and it's so visceral and what they go through. But again, you have pockets of like wonderful moments with these characters, and sometimes you never get to see them again, but they leave such a lasting impression that when you walk away, when you're moving on to the next scene, it doesn't feel like you're being worn out from what you just saw. It's like it's a nice transition from one thing to the next, because there's so many wonderful characters and so many wonderful scenes in this film that, I mean, at least for me, I've never gotten bored in this movie. And to this day, I still don't get bored of this film. I believe that this movie certainly holds up very well. It has a very timeless feel to it too. And I know that, when we were kind of discussing about the list of actors that are in this movie, every one of these actors delivers something that is absolutely memorable. Everybody, to like the bodyguards, to the guy that Clarence was talking to at the hamburger stand. Everybody has something to offer and something to for you to remember them by. Not that many movies do that very well, and if they do, not them hold up as well as the years have gone by.
And I feel that all of the little characters, and I don't mean that in any disrespectful manner, but like all of the supporting cast play such a believable character, believably, that it just makes, when the outlandish things happen, you're still like anchored into some sort of reality. So
Mhm.
like what I mean is that Michael Rappaport's character, I watched his character and go, oh yeah, that is exactly what Hollywood must have looked and felt like back then, and the way he
Mhm.
played it, and is like his uncertainty. Brad Pitt's character sleeping on the couch and just being, the door's knocked, someone's knocking on the door and he just doesn't even acknowledge. It's like I see that in past roommates.
Mhm.
And they build this level of reality for me where then you see the weird things like peeling rubber into traffic, or like gunshots, and you go, okay, but it's still somewhat anchored into reality, and I'm okay
Yeah.
with it. It
Yeah.
was very strange, very strange.
Yeah, and and the funny thing too is that when you have, like the dialogue scenes you have with these characters, it's you have like Clarence, who's talking about just pop culture stuff,
Yep.
and but the way he's talking about it does not seem like your average nerd, where you have someone who's like, hey, so this actor was here. It's nothing, there's nothing artificial about it, there's nothing annoying about it. He comes from like a really authentic spot in my mind, where I remember when I was watching the movie in preparation for the review, I was like, what, I don't remember ever meeting anyone as cool as that guy when it came to pop culture.
Well, let me introduce you to a buddy of mine named Patrick Strange.
Well, it's funny because Patrick is a guy that he has he has incredible stories that he could write a book about, and it'd be you'd be surprised that some of the things he's seen and come across. But what I'm trying to get at with Clarence here is just that the way he handles himself in those like conversations talking about pop culture, movies, and things like that. There's something about that character that does not seem like yeah, he is an outsider, but he doesn't seem like a loser in my mind. I hate to use that word like in this situation, but it's like most of the times when you see people like that and under those circumstances, they're presented as losers who are still trying to overcome some sort of struggle. That's not the case with this guy at all. He's got his shit straight. He's pretty self reliable, knows knows where his limitations are, and then knows when to step in when it's necessary. And then when you see that being presented throughout the story, you're like, wow, why can't most geeks be like that?
Yeah. And for a guy that's never left Detroit, small town,
Yeah.
he seemed pretty pretty go for it. Let's get it done. He finds cocaine. He's like, all right, we're going to LA. There was no second thought.
Well, so let's talk about that. So we have Drexel, who we mentioned before, that is Alabama's pimp and played by the wonderful and I think easily one of the top 10 best actors of all time, in my opinion. I don't know if you feel that way about Gary Oldman, but that guy, you put him in a movie, he's going to do well. The movie may suck, but he's going to do great. But when you see his performance in this movie, you get a performance that shows that why he is the best at what he does. And when he is in a conversation with Clarence about getting Alabama back, and Clarence telling him rather that, she's done. You have no control over her, so she's moving on to greener pastures, and that's it. And then we have that confrontation between the two of them, and it escalates from there. And then that particular situation that they're going through, where they're beating the shit out of each other, and then he ends up killing Drexel, has some serious consequences because of one faulty thing that he had forgotten in the mix of that chaos. But the thing is that because you saw how it all unfolded, it's so captivating. And then and you reflect back on that when you realize you don't see the details in the situation until it's brought up later on in a later scene, which is the Sicilian scene, which I know we'll get into later on. But the actors, the writing, everybody involved, little smaller details go unnoticed, and then when they're brought back to your attention, you're like, oh shit, you're right, I forgot about that. And it harkens back to something that I think Quentin does very well is, you don't notice little details. That's where I'm trying to get your attention here, because that shows me that you're either paying attention or you're not, and that's where it counts.
Or now that I have your attention, I know you're going to be paying attention to every little thing from this moment out, because you remember that you forgot about the ID.
Right. So that's a testament to the movie here. And like I said, even now to this day, as I watch it, there's really nothing that I can take away that has any really major flaws. Which let's talk about that Sicilian scene, because that's actually one of the best scenes I've ever seen in my entire life.
Iconic.
I love that scene. Christopher Walken, as many of you guys may know, is one of the best actors ever to ever graced us in this industry, making some iconic films, giving some iconic performances. But this one particular scene, by far, has got to be easily one of his top 5 of all time, in my opinion. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about when you first saw this scene. What was your first thought? And watching it again now, did you still have the same set of sentiments you had the first time when you saw it?
Yeah, I think, with Christopher, so looking at Christopher Walken in light of like Gary Oldman, where you go, Gary Oldman makes himself the character. Like, you forget that you're looking at Gary Oldman, because whatever character he's playing, he is that guy. Well, Christopher Walken does phenomenal work, but every time you see him, it is undoubtedly, it's Christopher Walken, a member of the gang, Christopher Walken, Amelia, Christopher
Mafia.
Walken, whatever it is, it's like, oh, this is Christopher Walken and he's doing this thing. And I think that is amazing, just as a testament as these two different actors with two completely different approaches. But for that scene, it's almost like I enjoy it every single time because as an East Coaster, I know exactly what Dennis Hopper is doing. Like, I know exactly what he's doing. He's like, hey, I know I'm not going to get out of here alive. I am going to give you a parting gift. Like, you are going to have to think about this forever. And
So
I smile.
let's talk about that scene though, because
I am not repeating any of that.
neither am I. Neither am I. But so let's so for anyone who doesn't know, who has not seen the movie, so basically, the mafia are looking for Clarence because they found out that he had taken the drugs that he had mistakenly taken after killing Drexel when he was trying to gather Alabama's clothing while she's been with him this whole time.
Drexel put the cocaine in a suitcase that happened to be mistakenly as Alabama's. When Christian Slater's character goes in, he kills Drexel. He grabs a suitcase that he thinks is Alabama's, and he inadvertently, unknowingly, had stolen cocaine, a shit ton, a suitcase full of cocaine, and he leaves his ID there, so they know that he has.
Well, he leaves his ID because Drexel had grabbed his ID to find out where he lives so he can go get Alabama.
Yep.
And then in the process, he ends up killing Drexel and then taking what he thought was to be Alabama's things and then forgot about his ID, which is understandable. It makes sense in that situation, I would think. So that's why it's like, you don't think about those little details, but when you hear this conversation between Dennis Hopper and Chris Walken bringing that, or at least when Chris Walken's bringing it up, you're like, oh fuck, now you're looking back on and reflecting on what had happened, and you realize, holy shit, this makes a lot of sense, and it's not something that is going to be too hard to what's the word I want to use, to believe.
Because there's a dead drug dealer missing drugs. The owner of the drugs is gonna go looking for the drugs, or looking for the drug dealer, find the drug dealer dead. Like, well, where are my drugs? Find the ID.
Do you think that conversation between these two actors, if the film was made today, do you think it would work? Do you think it would get a lot of negative reaction?
Yes,
Yes, as in it would work, or yes, as in it will get a lot of negative reaction?
Correct.
Okay.
I think it would work, but yeah, it would get a lot of negative reaction because that's like one of the hardest things to look at a movie that is 28, almost 28 years old now, where some of the conversations just kind of don't fly. Again, I enjoy the conversation because I know exactly what Dennis Hopper's character is doing. He was a police officer for 20 something years, retired. He knows the situation. He knows he's dead, but he's not going to beg because he knows it's not going to work. He just sits there and just steers into it. He just goes, okay, well, I'm going to insult you and your mother and your bloodline the only way I know how. Yeah. And I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, and apparently it's also a true piece of history too, which I didn't know at the time when I was watching the movie. I didn't know that was a legitimate fact in world history. So if anyone doesn't know, he brings Dennis Hopper's character brings up that Sicilians were the Moors had conquered Sicily and had slept with a lot of their women, and then the bloodline still remains to this day of the Moors' genes. And then he's dropping an N-bomb to pretty much insult the guy, to piss him off, knowing full and well that he has no way out. So he's trying to get the easy way out by doing a quick kill because he knew that was going to piss the guy off, and it worked. But leading up to that, in listening to that conversation, they're having a good time conversing with each other because they're laughing, and it's like that dichotomy. Like, are they going to be okay? Is he going to survive? That's kind of like the reaction I think you're meant to get. Because I remember when I first saw it, I was like, so I guess he's going to survive because he's leaving, right? Because he's laughing. He's there's joking with him. I mean, as a 9-year-old, I didn't know any better. So I was like, I was under the impression that he was going to walk away freely until I heard the conversation, what he said, and I was like, oh, okay. So, I mean, for you, when you saw that, I mean, I'm sure you obviously confirmed you knew what was going to happen, but
it was not a surprise to me at all. Once they started laughing and like it just became like this inconsequential conversation, it would just be like, oh, we're just gonna. I knew it was done. I knew Dennis Hopper's character was dead based on, unless like some action hero kicked down the door and fixed it, Dennis Hopper's character was dead. And he knew it. He knew the second he was getting punched in the face, tied to a chair, he's like, this is the end of the line. It's just a matter of how do I go out.
All right. So we've got that there. And then we also get introduced to Clarence's friend, Dickie, who is an actor out in LA, who is played by Michael Rapaport. And he's rooming with his his stoner buddy, played by Brad Pitt. I think his name is Glenn. Is that what his name? I can't remember his name. I've seen the movie so many times, but I'm always forget little names like that. But anyway, so his roommate, played by Brad Pitt, we get introduced to these guys, and then that's really kind of where the story sort of picks up, because then because it's funny, because this movie, and when you watch the first half, when they're in Detroit, it has like a whole different feel to it. The moment they get to LA, it kind of it shifts direction, and it also change, like the tones is different as well too.
Even the temperature of everything in Detroit was bluish, cold. And then when you get to
the color palette. Yeah. That's what
color
you're saying.
palette. Yep. Yeah.
So we get introduced to his friend, who is reaching out to him, who Clarence is reaching out to, because he knows some people in the industry that could probably want to buy some cocaine. And with the money they're going to be getting off of that, that's going to be more than enough for them to be able to live the rest of their lives, I guess, with whatever couple $100,000 were, which I'm like, I didn't even think it was possible. But I guess if you're going to Mexico, because that's where they ended up going at the end of the film, you can live 10 lifetimes with that amount of money. So whatever. So I think that when now that they've realized what they can do to better themselves by getting out of the bad situations that they're in and make a better living, but they're taking a risk to sell these drugs and then hope to get it for a better future. That's the end game.
They only made it worse. They only made scorched earth.
Yeah, and it escalates from there too. Because we get introduced to Dickie's acting class buddy, who's a bit of an asshole, played by Bronson Pinchot, I believe is his name, is the actor. Belky, yeah. And then we also get introduced to the producer, played by Saul Rubinek, who is a great actor. Mm-hmm. And then from there we just started to get more and more of this escalation of the cops getting involved, the mafia's involved now, and everything starts to culminate to this one particular moment. And it's no longer focused on Clarence and Alabama anymore. It's like 50 different things going on at once. But never once did I ever feel like it was a distraction, because it complemented with what was going on with the narrative. So I don't know if you've ever felt that way when you saw.
Those are my favorite movies. Those Guy Ritchie, like you're introduced to a dozen different characters and no idea how it all intersects, and then it all intersects into like one pinnacle moment. I enjoy those movies very, very much. So this was a pleasant surprise, because there was no exterior characters that were introduced. Everyone, you kind of knew where everyone was fitting and how everybody was there. They were all connected one way or another. But just that whole ending scene, they portrayed everybody's stakes really high and really believable. The cops are like, oh, we got to bust these guys, and we got to sell this, and then sell the drugs. We got to get the drugs back. We got to not go to jail. We got to just get this money. Everyone's stakes were high. It was all within the realm of believability for me. So I didn't find it distracting at all, but I was almost invested. I was almost equally invested to all the other subplots to this one moment.
So we get the shootout between the producer, or the producer's bodyguard, the police, the mafia. And it's almost like a Mexican standoff for a bit, where everyone's like walking into the room, have no idea what's going on. Huh?
I didn't say that. You said it. You called it a Mexican standoff.
Mexican. Oh, no. Well, everyone knows where I'm coming from with that. So everyone is in a room and they're confused of what's going on. And that, like I said before, it really has nothing to do with the characters, but it doesn't seem to be out of place, because it all made sense leading up to this one moment. And then you get that the shootout occurs. And the only thing that did bother me about the scene, which to this day, I remember as a kid when I saw it, I was like, why didn't this guy hear it in the bathroom? I guess it's a trend in this movie that, gunshots aren't loud enough for everyone to hear, because Clarence is in the bathroom after he's made a successful sale for the cocaine, goes to the bathroom, he's talking to Elvis, played by Val Kilmer, which we forgot to mention what he was doing in the movie, but he's having a conversation with Val Kilmer, or Elvis rather, and then a shootout occurs, and not once did he ever bother coming out and say, hey, is everything okay? And he just happens to walk out, doesn't know what's going on, and gets shot in the face. And then all of a sudden, we're led to believe that he's going to be dead. Obviously, he does survive. For those who don't know, he survives, and then
Spoiler.
Alabama and Clarence live happily ever after. But it's like everything that they're going through at that point. They are you're going along with the journey. You feel for these characters because you know where they're coming from. And then there's that one moment in the film where everything is going to be destroyed because the love story that you've kept up with these characters was very impactful, very meaningful, and then all of a sudden it's going to be taken away from you. So in the original ending, I know that Quentin Tarantino was going to have Clarence die, and Tony Scott had told Quentin, "Is like, listen, the ending that you had, it's good, but the thing is that I love these characters, and I feel like I feel cheated the fact that they go through this journey, and then Alabama's gonna be miserable, alone, left to wander in the world, and her one true love in her life, the one thing that's making her happy, is taken from her. I don't want to do that to her, and I don't want to do that to the audience." And I'm so glad he kept with this new ending there. I mean, knowing now that you know the original ending, do you feel like it was a proper choice? If keeping this ending or sticking with what Quentin had wanted to do.
I'm a fan of Quentin's work, and I feel like this again is just kind of watering down his image, his original image.
You think so?
I don't like Hollywood for a lot of different reasons, and they're like, yeah, a sad ending that doesn't work for us. We need to change it. Versus like buying the story and going with the story. Like they like to make a lot of changes.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, though, I mean, I see where you're coming from, and I would normally agree with you, but in this particular case, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that because I think that he's 100% right. The characters are, they went through a lot of drama. She got the shit kicked out of her by a mob guy, and then Clarence, fought off a pimp and nearly died in the process. So yeah, I would like to see them live their lives and live happily ever after. Does it sound cheesy for me to say that? Yes,
correct.
I agree 100%. But you know what?
They you see them in Mexico, and then it pulls back, and it's a storybook, and it's like, and they lived happily ever after.
Yeah,
pretty much. The storybook closes.
Yeah, pretty much, but only the Quentin way, really. Yeah. But they have a kid too, which is so clearly they've been able to move on and live a very happy and productive life from what we're able to see. We don't really see in between of those years that when they left LA to go to Mexico. But again, it's like I get why Tony did that, and even Quentin admitted it too. He said that please keep the original ending, because he said that he saw Revenge, which I think is a great movie too, that Tony Scott had directed, where the lovers die. Each one of the characters died. I forgot who it was, but it was a woman. She dies, and the guy's now left alone. He's like, that's a great ending to a wonderful story, and he's like, you mean it's a why would you want to change it for this story? He's like, because of what he said, what I mentioned earlier. But when Quentin saw it, he was like, you know what? If I had directed it, it would have been my ending. But now that he had directed it, it's his movie, therefore it's his ending. It makes sense for him, and it's better for him, and it's better for the film. And I'm the fact that Quentin had to agree to that, and even if he didn't, I still would say it's a great ending regardless. But it comes to show you that it's just depending on who is taking on the project and their motivation behind it. That may change your perception a little bit about how the story needs to be told. So I thought it was handled beautifully, in my opinion. I mean,
I enjoyed. I'm not gonna lie. I definitely enjoyed the story. Like, let me sit down, press play, watch it to the end. I definitely enjoyed it. Right. With the context, I go, I'm curious if what it would look like if they took the leash off and let Tarantino direct it. If it was like all of Tarantino's visions. Yeah. Because at this point, I just love where he goes with his stories and how he twists it and all of the different things that make it a Tarantino movie. So I think with context, the context of everything kind of ruins the movie. I'm like, I'm curious what it would have been like.
So you really think that if he had directed it, the film would have been a little bit better?
Darker,
but do you think it would have been a little bit better with his take on it, with his original take on it?
I don't want to say better. I think I just want to experience like what was really going on. Show me the original story. Show me your original vision.
Well, that's the thing. It's what you saw in the movie. Quentin even confirmed it too. And if you get the script, which I don't have, but I have read it, it's virtually the same exact story. The only difference is that the narrative, which was all over the place from like the first 2/3 of the movie, was mixed around, but Tony just rearranged it and kept it linear.
Linear. Got it.
So it's really the same exact movie with obviously some slight changes, but everything else is virtually the same, which is a
Gotcha.
rare thing to experience, with the exception of the ending, of course, but which is rare because that never really happens.
It never happens in a Tarantino movie.
No, it doesn't. But I'm just saying, but the fact that he didn't direct and someone else took the story and didn't change it, other than some of the structuring and the ending, that's about it. I mean, one film he directed, that he wrote was Natural Born Killers. And he wrote that movie, and then Oliver Stone like just completely changed a lot of things. So the original story and the original structure was no longer there. And he's like, I don't want my name to be on this movie. Well, we have to because of SAT or whatever the WGA rules are. So you have to get story credit now. So his name is still on the property, but that was his story. That was his movie until Oliver Stone took over and made it what it was, which I liked. I personally liked. I don't know how you felt about that movie.
I need to revisit it because it was pretty trippy, and I think I only saw it when it first came. Natural Born Killers when it first came out, and I don't like the female lead.
Oh, Juliette Lewis.
I don't like her face generally. Like I have a hard time looking at her face.
You hate Joel Edgerton's face. Now you hate Juliette Lewis's face.
Yeah.
What is the name? What are the people that you hate that start with their names start with the letter J? What is that with you?
I'm trying to think. Whose face do I like that starts with the J? Michael J. Fox, that doesn't count.
No.
Yeah. So yeah, as far as Natural Born Killers, I kind of want to watch it as an adult. I definitely didn't get it
kind of
when
kind of want to watch as an adult. Okay. Yeah. I like that.
Know, there's a lot of things, a lot of movies, like great movies that came out in my teens, in my early adulthood.
Yeah,
and I don't get it. I have zero context of what makes this so great. But yeah, and I like Woody Harrelson. I like Woody Harrelson's face,
but his name starts with a W.
I'm just saying, I'm trying to build the case that I just don't hate everybody's face. Okay, they're just,
unless your name starts with a J, then you're fucked. No, I'm just joking. But all right, well, listen, I
do want to mention before you kind of go into the closing section, according to IMDb, the budget for this movie was $13 million, which is very considerably low.
Yeah, and considering its time, yeah, but in today's standards, that would be what, like 40 million or something like that, which is considered low these days now.
Sure. I will say that the gross in America was 12.2, almost 12.3 million in America alone. The opening weekend was 4 million, and they grossed additional 13 million worldwide. So I can see why it's a cult classic, and I can see why some people might think it was a flop at the box office just based on the numbers alone. But still a cult classic nonetheless.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about movies, is that sometimes they don't get the attention that, some films may have deserved opening week, but then later on they start building some traction and people are catching on and realizing, holy shit, this was a great movie. This was one of those movies that for me, I remember I saw it fresh when it was out of theaters, a year or two later. So I was still within, that era of its release, more or less. But, as the years have gone by, I've noticed that, the cult status of this film has just started to get bigger and bigger and bigger as the years had gone by. And I'm not saying I was there first, it wasn't that, but I remember seeing that train, that build up to that. I'm like, holy shit, it's amazing to see that from the beginning all the way to where we are now. And for me this was my third favorite movie of all time, like my top 3 of all time. This is number 3. So we touched upon some things that I think were really important to highlight. The actors, directing, writing, the music. That wonderful Hans Zimmer score to do however whatever that thing is. However you play it, but honestly,
what is it like?
No, I'm just kidding. So I wanted to use that song that the little xylophones that what they're using to make that sound. I wanted to use that as the intro for my show, because that's the name "You're So Cool" came from this movie. So when she writes a little note on there, "You're so cool" with a heart, that's where it came from.
Gotcha.
So I
was going to ask you about that.
Yeah. So, and I wanted to use a similar theme that was used in that movie, which was near impossible to find. So I had to find the closest to it that I think would fit how I wanted the show to start off with. So yeah, this movie I definitely had. I carried my love for this movie since I was a little kid, and to this day, it has influenced me in other areas where I have infused into the things that I'm doing now. And the show being an example of that, a clear example of that, where I took the name from the movie and I took a theme that I wanted to go with, which I couldn't find, but I wanted something similar to kind of get that vibe of walking into something, not thinking it's gonna be one thing and it's gonna be a complete different story as it continues from there. So yeah, man, I love this movie. So I mean, I know you said you like the film, but if you were kind of rated on your end, how would you go about it now after seeing it from the first time now?
I definitely, as an adult, I enjoy it more. For me, when I first saw it in my early 20s, it was like, okay, it's a movie, it's a love story, kind of
You
has
just
its
thought it was
place.
okay?
I thought so, but
Okay.
a little bit of a savage, when in my 20s. I definitely appreciate more with the storytelling and watching kind of like the nuanced things, which I definitely would have overlooked in my 20s or like late teens, early 20s. The story again, Tarantino. I, there's nothing that really took me out of the story. Sure, some of the gunshots were like, oh, nobody heard gunshots. Okay. And a couple other little things, but it wasn't enough to be like, I don't believe any of this now.
Yeah.
Which a lot of movies do. A lot of movies,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, I'm done. This is not believable. I definitely enjoyed it as a watch.
Would
To
you go
watch
back and
as
watch it again on your own free time if anything, if nothing else was on and it happened to be on
I would,
TV?
yeah, I would definitely sit down. If it was on, I would sit down and watch it. I would say that it's something that I would watch when, if someone was like, show me something that encapsulates movie cinema, the Southern California, early 90s, that this would definitely be one of those movies. I mean, look at the landmarks, look at the filming locations. The feel, the look of LA was very is exactly what LA felt like when I moved there in 2006.
So when you saw those specific scenes out in LA or where they're shot in LA, was it pretty similar to what it was when you first moved to LA in 2006? Was it
Yeah,
all exactly the same
yeah.
as far as the
Like
aesthetics?
it felt right. It
Mm,
sounded right. And I'm watching the background. I kind of that's kind of what I do when I watch movies that are shot in
mhm.
LA. I kind of like, oh, I know where that is, and I've been there. Like the Safari Hotel is in
Yeah.
Burbank, not downtown Burbank, but it's like in the heart of Burbank, not too far from the studios.
Oh,
And
so it was still there when you moved out there?
yep, and it looks exactly like that. And I
Oh,
think it
really?
might even somewhere will say like from True Romance or something like that on the sign. So
We were in
uh
True Romance. Stay over here. Yeah.
yeah, people love that stuff. People
Yeah.
love the theme park that they were in is Magic Mountain. Uh
Is that
yeah, so
still a thing over there?
yep,
Okay.
it's Six Flags. It's Six Flags out there in
Okay.
Valencia, Santa Clarita, California.
Okay.
So it was good, and like I said, it felt right. It looked right, and it just brought me back to like when I first moved to LA. I was like, oh, this is nostalgic to me.
Did it make you miss LA when you watched the movie, watching those scenes?
It made me miss that LA. It made me miss that time frame of LA because
Oh,
LA
okay.
to me no longer feels like that. It's different. It's different. So
Yeah.
it made me very nostalgic, um, almost a touch of homesick. Like, oh, that's what I considered home. But yeah, like I said, I would watch it, and if anybody had asked, like, what is a great movie that gives you that look and feel of moving to LA in the '90s, this would be one of the first movies I'd recommend.
Really? Okay.
Yes,
Interesting. All right. Well, so we both are on the same boat. Well, I love the movie. I think. Do you love the film or do you just like it?
uh, I strongly like it.
I give it a solid thumbs up.
Yeah, like
A
a
confident thumbs up,
thumbs up and a smile. Does that?
and
That's
a
gotta
Happy
add.
Meal too.
Yeah,
The
like
hamburgers.
greatest movie, my favoriteest movie. No,
Really?
but I think it's a solid movie. I enjoyed it. I would recommend. I would recommend.
You would recommend? Would you watch it with your wife? Because had she seen the movie before?
I think she saw it back in the day. I don't think she's seen it recently. She did kind of poke her head in and was like, "Oh yeah, that movie," and then kind of walked away.
You think if you were to get her to watch it with you and have her sit down to see it from start to finish, you think she would actually enjoy the movie?
I think she would enjoy it because
Okay.
it is it's a little bit of chaos, a little bit of
Mhm.
love, a little bit of violence, a little bit of
What scene do
all
you
of the
think she would
things.
love in that movie? What would be the scene that you think she would like connect with the most?
Uh, that that Alabama could take a punch.
You know what? Just about every female I've ever come across that I've recommended to see the movie, that seems to be like their favorite scene. I don't know why.
Because
Um,
I think it's poorly portrayed in other movies
you're right. You got a good point.
where a girl gets punched and like well, I mean, first of all, like it's hard to watch a woman get punched, right?
Yes, I agree
Like
100%. Yes.
in real life, like on YouTube or wherever it is, but in a
Yeah.
movie, it's also hard to watch. And the fact that she got mopped up, and they just go, "Oh, there's more." This scene is going to be 5-6 minutes. Enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
I think that she would have enjoyed. I think she enjoyed that because my girl likes to fight. She's a little spunky.
She's a little fighter in her.
A
That's
little
good.
fighter. Every time a girl gets punched, you're like, A, he wouldn't punch her like that, and B, she wouldn't faint like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, we didn't talk about that scene too much, but yeah, that's a powerful scene, man, because you know, when you see the shit that she goes through, and then to overcome that, you know, honestly, it pays off. And then when she's losing her mind because she's
Yep.
right in that moment and she's like wired up, and I mean, yeah, I could see that. I mean, I'm surprised I didn't really pay attention to under those contexts before, but yeah, I can definitely agree with the reasons why I think most women would gravitate towards that scene. All right,
She
man.
didn't
Well,
she
go
didn't
on.
beg. I'm sorry. Like in closing, like she didn't beg. She didn't, it was like, okay, this is what we're doing. You know, she didn't beg to stop. She wouldn't like there was none of this like, oh, I'll figure it out. Stop hitting me. She was
Yeah,
like, this is what we're doing. And I think that speaks volume on her character. Like, this is normal. This is a commonplace for me. Let's
we
go.
do this in Alabama all the time. So
My little brother punches me harder. Like, what? Okay.
it's that cornbread muscle. Yeah. All right. Well, so you and I are in agreement. This is a good movie. I love the film. You like it a lot,
Strongly. I
and
strongly like it.
strongly like it a lot. Okay. So those are our thoughts on the film. Now, for anyone out there who has never seen the movie, or if you have seen the film, I'm really curious to hear everyone's thoughts about what your first thoughts were on the movie and how you feel about it now upon rewatching it. If you're like myself, who's seen it over 70 times and still has exact same sentiments. In some ways, I actually love it more almost every single time I watch it. But for like yourself, Loy, you had mentioned that you saw it, kind of liked it. And then as you saw it again, you appreciate it more and more to the point where you actually really do like it. So if you are in that boat like myself or like Lee, please let us know that in your what your thoughts are in the comment section down below. And also follow us on our social media accounts. We have a Instagram page and Facebook page on New Release Wednesdays. Make sure you follow us there, and also follow on Twitter at DNRW. And Mr. Loy Lee, where can they follow you, good sir?
Loyly Comedy across all of your social media websites. LOYLEE Comedy. We're doing this. I'm with Kuya P, Kuya and the Kid, Short, Pale, and Handsome, NREW, New Release Wednesdays. I'm all over the place, but you can find me, Loyly Comedy, and I have all the links to all of the things over there.
And please check out Kuya P or Kuya and the Kid. I'm sorry. Great show. Fan of it. I love episode 2, man. Awesome job what you guys did on that episode. Really dug it. And also follow me on my social media accounts. You can follow me on Instagram, Rob_Medina0585, on Twitter, Rob Medina0585, and on Facebook, simply just Rob Medina. And also follow me on my show social media accounts. You're So Cool with Rob Medina on Instagram, on Twitter, You're So Cool WRM, and check out the show on the channel as well too. I'll make sure we have the iCard there for you to check out Loy's channel and also on the show here too. And that is pretty much it, guys. So we appreciate everybody out there for joining in, chat and hearing us out. And if there's any recommendations you guys have, let us know. We would be happy to check out anyone's requests out there. All we ask you to do is Follow us on our social media accounts. Reach out to us there, and make comments in the section comment section down below. And otherwise, you guys have a fantastic day. Stay safe out there, and get plenty of rest. Cheers.